Good afternoon. Today, we're going to tell the story about the ransomware attack that hit Volue 4th of May last year. But this is not a story about how Volue was hit. It is a story about how multiple industries were facing cyber threat and how two organizations joined forces to minimize disruption, to help the energy industry mitigate risk and accelerate recovery. The organization Volue partnered with was KraftCERT, and Margret and Raaum will talk more about them later. To give you a perspective of the complexity of this attack, it is useful to look at the industries Volue serve. We supply software and services to industries critical to society. Our customers are the ones making sure that we have electricity, water, and reliable infrastructure for transportation. Volue's ability to mitigate risks and accelerate recovery is therefore also important to our society. Before we dig into details, I'd like to give you three main takeaways from the cyber attack. This might be helpful for you in preparing for a cyber incident impacting your organization. Number one, different customer groups cares about different things. Some customers only cared about availability to software or the timeline to get the software back up again. Other customers didn't care at all about downtime. They only worried about the potential data loss and/or data theft. Our investors cared about our ability to recover and maintain our customer relationships. When you have long-term investors, a short revenue drop or unplanned recovery is a one-off cost. Our colleagues were committed. They cared about each other and all of our customers. Second, the Volue contingency plan categorized stakeholders in two groups, Volue and the outside world. In a real-world scenario, it is super important to distinguish between customers, partners, colleagues, investors, and governments. They all have different needs and different expectations to us. We only had hours to produce a communication strategy that would satisfy the information needs of our stakeholders, whilst at the same time maintain full focus mitigating the situation and recover our operations. And three, when being hit by a ransomware attack, lots of business critical systems and processes can be affected. You need an incident response team that not only can recover services, but also make the right business priorities. Having the right team and the right partners in place at the get-go can be a question of survival, or at least severe business impacts, once the incident is a reality. Let me give you a bit more context to who we are at Volue. Volue was created in 2020 by merging 6 different companies operating in the same industry sector, renewable energy. We're mostly operating in Europe, and 40% of the players across the European power exchanges are our customers. Our target market is industries critical to society. So any operational impact to the services we deliver can potentially have a major impact to the people on the European continent. Our customers are typically members of a CERT, and the most significant one is KraftCERT, who is with me on stage.
Yes, I'll give you some background on the industry. Norway, with its 5 million people, has 1,600 hydroelectric power plants and over 50 wind farms. The grid or transmission system operator is state-owned, They make sure the frequency stays at 50 Hertz and can override market mechanisms to balance generation and consumption, preventing cascading problems and outages. In surplus situations, Norway export electricity, and in deficit situations, we import electricity. The Norwegian power grid is associated with the EU through agreements and are part of the European electricity market. Norwegian sector-specific regulation has existed since 1948 and includes various security requirements, including redundancy and contingency planning. The Ministry of Energy is responsible for the policy, which also now covers cyber issues. Regulation today was inspired by FERC and is revised regularly. The regulator does, however, not regulate operational aspects as choice of vendors and information technology. So Norway has about 115 electric utility companies, where 88 would be considered small by EU standards, and probably all of them by US standards. Around 50 of these have less than 7,000 customers, and they struggle to have a dedicated security staff, and they outsource a great deal. They end up implementing the security framework of their vendors and service providers. So supply chain risk is an increasing concern, and the majority of products and applications are developed and distributed by transnational enterprises. The other sectors, the oil and gas companies, are larger, they're less regulated, and for the most part more mature, but they can constitute 60% of Norway's exports, so it's a critical sector too. And the water wastewater companies are, as in the US, smaller and partly municipal, with a slightly lower maturity.
With this as a context, on the morning of 4th of May last year, I received an escalation about a potential ransomware attack. It was not confirmed, but it was believed to be a rogue attack. With 20 years of experience as a technologist in the telecom and software industry, I know a thing or two about the potential impact of a cybercrime, so I was prepared. Or at least, I felt prepared. We trained for these scenarios many times, so my immediate reaction was to put theory into practice. Looking at what we'd done to prepare, we felt confident that we were ready to combat a cyber attack. We'd gone through ISO 27001 certification of our processes, a contingency plan was in place, and we'd executed incident response training on a regular basis. A connection to KraftCERT and an external incident response team was also in place. As with everything else in life, you can only prepare so much. The rest, you will have to manage as you go. We quickly learned something that we'd never experienced during training: real customers and media. Our contingency plan clearly described customer escalation routes and media contacts, and only I, as the CEO, or another nominated executive, was authorized to communicate externally. Volue has more than 2,200 customers, including 8 of the 10 largest power producers in Europe. The scale of external attention was a completely new and untested territory. So let's be honest. There was no chance that I would be able to describe the details of the attack, nor would we be able to scale out to meet the needs of our customers. With our external incident response team being mobilized within 30 minutes, we had boots on the ground with capabilities and capacity, but we needed all the manpower we could get hold of to recover from the cyber attack. So we had to come up with a strategy to scale out and let our technical specialists do what they do best: solving problems and bring us back online. Our contingency plan suggested that I, or another executive that I would nominate, would be the only authorized person that could provide information about the incident. This is a great principle, as we must make sure that we communicate consistently with verified information. That didn't work for two reasons. We were bombarded with requests to large parts of the organization, and our important stakeholders demanded continuous and up-to-date information. At the beginning of the attack, we lacked both good answers to relevant questions, as well as the means to inform relevant staff with up-to-date information. Our employees were in large parts located in home offices due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The company equipment they had at hand could potentially also be affected by the attack. So we looked at what we had. We had two good partners. Our external IRT team was mobilized within 30 minutes and started analysis and recovery. Many of our customers had a membership to a CERT, and since we had a partnership with KraftCERT, we came up with an unusual proposal. We asked them if they could be the primary contact point for our customers. We would provide them with continuous updates and gave them also direct access to our IRT team. This helped us focus recovering from the cyber attack and in parallel provide consistent and accurate communications to interested parties. So let's have a closer look. We solved the problem in 3 steps. First, media and other external parties that wanted information about the incident and what we did to combat the attack. Second, customers that was affected or at risk of being affected. In the initial phase of the incident response, we had to assume that all customers could be affected, as we had too little hard evidence to isolate the footprint of the attack. This required us to mobilize and execute a comprehensive communication strategy within hours. We communicated through open online webinars, and we took as many questions from the audience as we managed. In addition, we published a recovery status update on a daily basis online. On these webinars, we had more than 500 participants on a daily basis, spanning from cyber experts to top-level executives, in addition to journalists and practically anyone with an interest. You might ask how we were able to communicate with the right level of details to such a broad range of stakeholders. The answer is that we weren't. Neither did we want to. We had to keep it relatively high level. There was lots of information that we didn't want to expose, nor could we expose. Not only to protect ourselves, but especially the interests of our most important assets, our customers. Step 1 and 2 left us with a tricky step 3. Our customers needed a trusted partner they could talk to, in which they could get answers to detailed and sensitive questions that we wouldn't surface in open webinars with the outside world. KraftCERT, together with several customers, had already sent us requests for detailed information. They needed more insights to evaluate their own cyber risk by analyzing the nature of the attack in combination with the products and services they were consuming from Volue as their supplier. This introduced several problems. We didn't scale. 700 employees fully focused on recovery, 2,200 customers with urgent demand for deep insight. In addition, we do not and should not know more about our customers' infrastructure than what we need to. We didn't have a solution for this, but we had a good and trusted relationship to KraftCERT. So we came up with the idea to ask KraftCERT to become our scale-out partner and an independent go-between towards our customers. This would allow us to communicate unfiltered to a trusted source and let KraftCERT distribute relevant information to their constituents. So we asked them.
Yes, this was an unusual request for an organization like us. KraftCERT is, Kraft means power, is the Norwegian ICS cert. We cover electric energy, oil and gas, water, wastewater, and the ICS industry. Norway has chosen to fulfill the NIS directive, for those of you familiar with that, by establishing sector-based incident response teams, and KraftCERT has such a role. It's not state-owned, but it's a non-profit corporation mandated by the government to be part of the contingency organizations in the sectors. One of the reasons to establish this as a non-governmental body was to enable a higher trust level so that each company may rely on information about specific incidents or vulnerabilities not getting out, or even to the regulator. Utilities confide in us and share concerns that they wouldn't necessarily share with the regulator. We strive to build and maintain this high trust level by displaying a good understanding of the data, the customer technology, the infrastructure, and dependencies, and being a partner to the companies rather than a service provider. We'd like to be seated on the same side of the table as the companies. We also try to know the company's vendors and service providers to get a more complete view of the vulnerabilities, and therefore also a more correct threat picture. We have transparent processes. We're quite straightforward, and we try to prime the information flow pump to share by sharing information, relevant information quickly. So the role in this incident, as Trond mentioned, we already had an established trust relationship with Volue. So when an energy company called that specific morning and asked for an update on the incident, we hadn't actually heard about it, but we only had to pick up the phone and call the CISO, and he confirmed the attack, but the state of things were very unclear at that point. So after informing the sectors about the incident, we started experiencing an enormous pressure as well from constituents to get information so that they could perform corresponding protection and detection. They asked for things like indicators of compromise, malware signatures, threat actor techniques. And they were asking what measures to take and about information leaks. As this extent of the incident was unclear, and with Volue's diverse portfolio covering a range of operational aspects, this was possibly an incident affecting the entire electric, oil and gas, and water sectors in Norway, and as I understand, more than Norway, or understood after a while. So the temperature was really high, and to be honest, we probably weren't being too helpful. We were more like Nag Central. Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Regularly asking for updates for the various products and sectors. And when Volue then asked us whether we would like to take an active part of the IRT, handling technical information towards both our constituency, but also the Volue constituency. This was something novel. It was a role we've never taken before, but we said yes, simply because it was the right thing to do. In dire times, we should all unite. We reached out to our partners to do things like reverse engineering, or that could provide useful information pertaining to the case, and we fed this back into the investigation. We had to balance the information sharing between the constituency's needs and the need to protect sensitive information in the midst of an investigation. The information was also differentiated according to the type of constituent or partner. A CERT, a regulator, and a utility, as Trond mentioned, have vastly different needs. And handling the incident with constituents cross-country borders, communicating with the local regulator, was also uncharted territory for us. We therefore organized separate web meetings, set up secure download sites, created tailored mailing lists, etc., to ensure correct dissemination of information.
So bringing a company that had been operating continuously for more than 50 years to a complete shutdown in 30 minutes was for me a new experience, which I could talk about for hours. But in summary, we started to bring the company back online within days, and we were operating at full capacity within weeks. To keep it short, there's a few learnings that I would like to highlight. Looking back at the cyber incident in May, there's no doubt that this was a stress test to the organization. At the same time, I feel confident that what we've learned about our industry, our customers, and our technology, we would never have learned through training and exercise. To be a bit blunt, I believe that the cyber attack on Volue brought valuable cyber awareness to the industry community we serve. Rather than trying to battle the incident quietly, we did the opposite. We told the world about it. It felt a bit risky at the time, but looking back, I now recognize that we gained more trust than we lost. If I have an ask to you as a security community, it is that we should be more open. As Margret talked about, we need to be careful about what we share, but not if we share. And personally, I'm a big believer in openness and transparency, that it will help educate and over time reduce the risk and impact of cybercrime. And last but not least, think carefully through how you are set up for success when you're facing a major incident. We were fortunate. We had a partner like KraftCERT that was willing to expand their role and go the extra mile in partnership.
It may be difficult to see how this trust model could work. It went way past an NDA. I think it might be partly a cultural thing, but of course it also relates closely to the pre-existing relationship. In the handling, it was sometimes difficult to keep our neutrality, since we were basically both part of the IRT and of the constituents organization, and this should ideally have been exercised. However, we both learned side by side with the constituents, and we both came out of this stronger and wiser.
So this is our story about partnership, trust, and collaboration in battling a cyber attack. If we were to summarize in a few key points, this is the essence. A cyber attack is more than an attack on a single company. It is an attack on the ecosystem surrounding your company. You should build collaboration and communication procedures with key stakeholders upfront and practice your procedures with your partners.
Training the organization is important, but you should also involve incident response teams that have the right experience. You need forensics, but you also need to handle information sharing and customer contact.
During an attack, your customers will show empathy. They know it very well could happen to them in the future. But what they really care about is what impact the attack will have on them today, tomorrow, and in the future. Think about what data you hold on their behalf, the services you deliver, and the consequences for your customers if you can't recover your services in an acceptable time frame.
Do not assume that you have the necessary processes and assistance in times like these. This definitely has to be verified.
On behalf of Margret and myself, thank you for your time and have a great rest of the conference.